Good evening and welcome to the regular public meeting of the Henry County Board of Commissioners for 6:30 p.m. Monday, July 17, 2012. At this time, I would like to invite you to join us for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Holder.
Heavenly Father, we come this evening asking your blessings on each of us as we go about doing the business of Henry County. We ask that your blessings be with us to open our minds, our hearts, and to do the right thing in the many issues that are facing us this evening. Also, Heavenly Father, we ask that a special prayer and blessings be with Commissioner Bowman as he undergoes some rigorous health issues in the near future. Be with all of us as we go to our homes. Give us a safe trip home. Be with our men in uniform as they protect us overseas and here at home through our police and fire and our emergency services. These things we ask, Heavenly Father, in thy name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask for an acceptance of the agenda.
Move to approve, Madam Chair.
Motion by Mr. Holder. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Stamey. All in favor? Motion carries 4-0. The first item on the agenda is an Eagle Scout proclamation. I always love doing these because we get an opportunity to recognize an outstanding youth in our community for a project that has benefited so many. And tonight we're going to honor Mr. Cole Odom, and this is for his work on behalf of the Historical Military Museum at Heritage Park. Whereas McDonough resident Cole Odom has participated in Boy Scouts of America Troop 99 out of Salem Baptist Church for approximately 6 years, and whereas as a Boy Scout, Cole desired to complete requirements to earn the rank of Eagle, which entailed finding an appropriate project to plan and complete, and whereas Cole, along with county officials, came up with the idea to design a library room in the Military Museum where veterans and citizens could come for fellowship and to learn about the United States military history. And whereas Cole secured the funding for materials such as paint, carpeting, and new furniture, and enlisted the help of his parents and fellow scouts to help with the construction, carpet installation, and painting of the new library for the Military Museum. And whereas Cole is an outstanding student at Union Grove High School, where he excels in honors and AP classes, as well as extracurricular activities such as the ROTC program, and was named the most outstanding male graduate in Youth Leadership Henry. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Henry County Board of Commissioners that we wish to extend our deepest gratitude to Cole Odom for his outstanding work on the library at the Military Museum and for his dedication as a Boy Scout in making his community a better place to live and for being a positive role models for others the 17th day of July 2012. And we have Cole with us tonight, and also I want to ask Mr. Jim Joyce, who is the curator of the museum at Heritage Park. Jim, if you'd like to come forward and describe a little bit about the project that Cole has completed. And Cole, if you could also come forward at this time, and when Jim finishes speaking, we want to ask you to join us so that we may present the proclamation to you here to my left. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. What you see here is just one corner of the library, actually. And what we've done is the back room in the building is we've designed it so that it can be not only a place for fellowship of our veterans, in phase one, a comfortable place for them to come together, to be able to speak with one another about shared experiences, be it World War II, Vietnam, current day, whatever. But we also are looking forward with a vision for phase two, which is the ability to record our older veterans, especially our World War II veterans, and so we can record that history before they leave us. We lose approximately 1,100 World War II veterans in this country every day now. We have so many of them here in Henry County and the surrounding areas as well that come to visit us at the museum, and we want to be able to record that history. What we want to do with that history is obviously give the family a copy, so they'll always have that history and always be able to see their loved one. But we also want to be able to archive a copy of that so that when others want to come in and learn about that history, they can see those guys talking about their experiences when they were in the service. In addition to that, we're looking at the possibility of getting a copy of those CDs placed in the Library of Congress, so everybody in the United States has access to that. I will tell you that when we first started this room, there was nothing in there but cold cement and lockers and stuff in every one of those cubicles that you see in that picture. And today, you see the furniture, you see the painted walls, you see the carpet, but what's really hard to see here is the fact that there's 52 military dioramas in those cubicles that you see there now, that were done by another Henry County resident, Mr. Garth Coker, over a period of 30 years, and he donated his entire collection to complement what Cole did. So we're very, very proud of not only that room, but even more so, we're proud of Cole. Thanks.
Well, let's give this young man a hand.
That's fine. Thank you.
Moving on in the agenda, we have another opportunity to recognize some outstanding individuals here in our community with our police life-saving commendations. And our Chief of Police, Keith Nichols, is going to come forward and make some presentations. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Good to see you all tonight. I come before you almost like a proud parent tonight. This is a great honor for me, and obviously it's a great honor for these two individuals, two officers. Officer Martin, he's been with us for about 4 years now, I think, and he came to us from Athens, Clark County, and he actually commuted from Athens while working here for quite some time, and then he finally moved to Henry County. Officer Jamie Barrett, we actually hired her as a non-certified officer and put her through the academy. I believe she had a class of about 6 from Henry County, and several of them are with us here tonight. And while I'm talking about that, I want my hats off to the individuals that are over here, our police officers, because they do a phenomenal job here in Henry County. A lot what we do is not always very popular. We chose this profession, and we knew we'd do things like issue people citations that makes them a little angry, and sometimes we have arrest folks. But in this particular occasion, these two officers that are standing in front of you tonight had an opportunity to save somebody's life. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've rendered a lot of first aid, but I've never saved anybody's life. So this is a huge accomplishment, and I'm going to go ahead and read what happened on the night. Now, we did offer the individual who whose life they saved to come here tonight, but unfortunately he couldn't make it. On April 20th, 2012, Officer Jamie Barrett and Officer Steve Martin responded to a person shot call whereby the victim had accidentally shot himself in the leg just below the kneecap. They were advised that the victim possibly had an arterial wound to his leg. Officer Jamie Barrett had completed military training in applying tourniquets and went to retrieve a tourniquet from the trunk of her vehicle after assessing the victim's wound. Officer Barrett went to place the tourniquet on the victim's leg when Officer Steve Martin advised that he is a certified EMT. Officer Martin applied the tourniquet to stop the bleeding. Officer Barrett, Officer Martin, Henry County Fire Department personnel, and doctors at the hospital relayed that your actions were critical in saving this patient's life. Paramedics on the scene advised the tourniquet, preventing him from losing a large amount of blood, which could have resulted in his death. In recognition of your quick thinking and heroic actions, the Henry County Police Department is honored to present you this life-saving medal award on this 7th day of July, 2012. Thank you very much.
And we need a picture.
I asked our police officer to stay just 1 minute. I'd like to make a comment if you don't mind.
Please, Mr. President.
I got a call just the other day from a lady that one of our officers pulled over. And when it started, I thought it was going to be a rough call because it kind of halfway started out that way. But basically, she was calling to tell me how much she appreciated the professionalism of the officer. Of course, it didn't hurt that the officer gave her a warning, but he was going to give her a ticket, and he would have been very well in his rights to do so. But he had an opportunity to talk to the lady, and at the end of that conversation came a warning, and she did tell me that she deserved the ticket, and she was out of line. And I just want to say thank y'all for a job well done. Okay. That's all I have if y'all need to go back to work.
Thank you. We appreciate everything you do every day for our county.
So not all
You're all heroes.
bad, so.
All right, we're going to move on to Planning and Zoning Services. The first item that we have this evening is a resolution requesting approval of an amendment to the current agreement with Spalding County to provide inmate labor on various county projects. Our presenter is Michael Harris, Planning and Zoning Services Division Director, Exhibit Number 12.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, board members. Back in 2005, the board approved authorized the county staff to enter into contract with Spalding County for the purpose of utilizing some of their inmate labor crews. At that time, it was just one crew to be utilized by our stormwater department. They came back a couple years later in 2009 and amended the contract to add a second crew. Those two crews right now are currently working with the stormwater department assisting with detention pond, clean out and things of that nature. So, and that's been going along really well. Tremendous savings. I think the estimated savings is well over $100,000 per year annually because we're utilizing these crews. Each crew is consists of one security personnel provided by Spalding County and upwards of either 8 to 10 inmates. So it's a substantial amount of labor that's being utilized for the cost of one supervisor. Since that time, we've added a third crew that's been utilized by our building facilities maintenance department. They've been doing a variety of different labor-intensive jobs, such as more recently cutting grass at the airport, things of that nature, assisting with the building a playground. You had to move a playground set for the rec department, and fence removal, demolition removal, things that need to be done at various buildings. So it's been a tremendous asset for the facilities maintenance department. What we're asking this evening is to amend our contract to reduce the amount of time we utilize that third crew. It has no impact whatsoever on the two crews that are working with the stormwater, but we felt that we could continue to utilize and maximize our efforts with the third crew that's being utilized by our facilities maintenance, but on a reduced level. Right now, we have them for 5 days. You know, we try to schedule them for big major projects. Obviously, we're having so many. When they come, it's typically about average of eight inmates. So we want to amend the contract to, on average, 3 days a week, but what we kind of give the flexibility of saying a maximum of 12 days per month. So if 1 week we needed them for 1 day, we could use them that 1 day, and if that next week we needed them for 4 or 5 days, we have the flexibility of being able to use them, for a longer period of time. So we estimate a savings of, as you can see from the item, of roughly about $20,000 per year by making this reduction. And again, we still anticipate that we'll still be able to maximize our use and become that much more efficient, making sure we schedule those big labor-intensive projects so we can make sure we have them available when we need them.
And Michael, I also want to stress too, citizens may ask why we're not using our own inmate labor, and we are actually.
Yes, we are.
And thanks to our Sheriff Keith McBrayer, a large number of our buildings are being cleaned by the crews that are, by the inmates that are housed at the Henry County Jail.
Yeah.
And that's at a huge cost savings too for the county as well. And we also use community service to do a lot of cleanup work around the county as well.
Roadside pickups, they're big on that, as well as pickups around the facilities as well. But you're right, the sheriff says has about maxed out what they can, the inmates that they're using from our own jail system.
Right. Does any board member have a question or comment pertaining to this item? Mr. Holder?
I have a comment, and I'm certainly supportive of using the prison labor. But I don't know if other commissioners have had this comment or not. I certainly have had it several times. Normally, these inmates that are working for stormwater are doing it in detention ponds that are right in neighborhoods. And I've had several calls from neighbors who see the people there and they want to know who the prisoners are, what they're in for. Well, I can't tell them that. But they say, well, they may stalk my house and be back tonight and clean it out. Well, probably those won't, because they're going to be locked up tonight. But nevertheless, it is an issue. Have any of the rest of you heard that same comment?
A couple of times.
I have, and I don't know how to address it. But it is a concern, especially if there's a lady or a young child or something alone at home, and the detention pond is next to their house, and these inmates are all around it, cleaning it out. I can understand the concern. But it is something that's very cost-effective for the county to do, and I just wish you would look into it and see. I don't know how to address it, to be quite honest with you. I don't.
And I'd like to let the public know that they are supervised by, they have a licensed correctional officer that supervises them, as well as our stormwater crew also supervises the work that's going on. And likewise, even with the work that they do with facilities maintenance, their correctional officer is always with them. They always have to be present with them, as well as our county staff supervising the work. So, there's a couple layers of supervision that's included with that. And there have been only a small number of incidences that have occurred, because they know if they do mess up, for them, it's actually kind of looked upon as, they look forward to the opportunity to be able to get out of the jail system, and then typically, if they're able to work, it helps them on their sentence. So it certainly serves as an incentive for them to do the right thing, and once they get the opportunity to go out there and work, to make sure that they're doing, they don't do anything outside of the bounds of the regulations. And there have been a few occasions where they have, if anything was brought to the attention of the county or to the corrections officer, that individual was immediately taken back to the prison and no longer allowed on that detail or on any further Henry County detail.
These are not violent offenders, are they?
I don't know. I'm not sure the nature of their offenses, honestly, Chairman. I don't believe.
I added stormwater. We post signs out when they go in a neighborhood and put signs that there is a detail working in that area. So, those are placed when we were in those areas. And I believe, I'll have to check with Butch, but I think we send out notices when we do work in those areas ahead of time and notify people that we are going to be on site. So we do try to send out notices ahead of time so they don't have those shocks when they look out the window and see, some orange suits in their backyard. So there's a couple things that we do to try to make people aware that they're going to be there.
Any other board member have a question or comment? Michael, I would like you to follow up and ask to make sure that those that are on the crew are not incarcerated for violent offenses. I think that would give a lot more, it would help to calm our citizens down when they see them in our county, because the last thing we want to do is bring a lot of violent people into our community and expose our citizens to any potential harm.
I'll certainly check into that and follow back up with the board.
Thank you. You have before you a resolution amending the contract between Spalding County and Henry County for the use of inmate labor, and I'll look to a board member to make a motion on this. Motion by Mr. Bowman, a second by Mr. Holder. All in favor? Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item, or items, are going to be public hearings. Charles K. Penrod of Locust Grove, Georgia, requests an ordinance amendment to Chapter 7, Table 7.02.04B for types of fences to allow a fence to be located within the front yard in accordance with Sections 12.02.11 and 12.03.00 of the Henry County Unified Land Development Code. Our presenter is Sherry Hobson Matthews, Director of Planning and Zoning, and that is Exhibit Number 13. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. As Chairman Mathis has indicated, the request before you this evening is actually a request that was submitted by Mr. Charles K. Penrod. And if you all will recall, this request came to you in June 18th of this year. At that time, it was tabled because the commissioners had some questions regarding how we were going to regulate the individual fences that were coming in, and there were some concerns on how we define decorative. Staff went back, checked other jurisdictions, and it did vary from one jurisdiction to another. What we have recommended in light of trying to handle one situation that the applicant brought forth, realizing that whatever decision we make, it will affect the county, we have suggested, or we are recommending, that we allow the privacy fence or the decorative fencing within the RA zoning district, whether it's inside of a subdivision or outside of a subdivision, but we require that there is some type of administrative approval granted by the Architectural Review Committee. The Architectural Review Committee is the Planning and Zoning Director and or his or her designee, and the Building Department Director and or his or her designee. It would just be a simple request to the Planning and Zoning Office with some type of justification or hardship presented, indicating why they're wanting to erect the fence within the front yard, and then we would approve it on a case-by-case basis. I have had one or two phone calls regarding the ordinance, and a lot of the questions posed and the concerns raised were, we have elderly grandparents or individuals that are residing with us, and we're wanting to erect the fence so that they don't wander off. We have a number of individuals that may have pets, and they're just using the fence to make sure that the pets stay on their properties. So we certainly think that the amendment is something that's needed. I know originally we recommended just allowing it outright, but I certainly recognize that there are some concerns with just allowing it with no type of oversight from the county staff. There are individuals that are here to speak tonight in support of the request, but that is all that I have to present at this time. And if you have any further questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
I just have one quick question, because as you said, you have an architectural review committee, which may be the committee of one. If a citizen is not satisfied with the opinion of that review, they do have the right to appeal to the Board of Commissioners, correct?
That is correct, unless you all want to add language that if the Architectural Review Committee finds that it is not approved, that the division director can override that decision, so that they don't have to wait to get on an agenda and pay the appeal fee to actually bring it before us. So whatever you all would like for us to do, we can certainly do that.
I think there needs to be some type of process where if they are not satisfied with one review, that they do, and the division director level may well be the next step in that process.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'd like to see also that the final appeal could be to the Board of Commissioners, because many times, and I'm not saying you would do this, but I'm just saying that if the Architectural Review Committee was made up of the director and one of his or her designees, then many times that could be to support that employee. I know if I were in the citizen's position, I'd rather take my chances before 5 people that had absolutely nothing to prove than I had just, taking the opinion of 1 or 2. So I'm saying that's fine, and if it got resolved before it gets to the Board of Commissioners, that's wonderful. But if it doesn't, I think that it should be written in that the people would have the right of appeal to the Board of Commissioners.
So you have a review, and then you have an appeal, and then a final appeal.
That's correct, and we can certainly add that language to the language that's being proposed.
Okay. Mr. Bowman?
Is the problem that I've had with it all along in R2, R3, R4, R5, or any of the subdivisions, and I still have an issue with the language, is it says decorative wood, stone, masonry, or wrought iron. I feel like there should be some type of height requirement, because if you completely close in a property inside of a residential community, and I'm just going to look outside the box, the wrong people end up in that house. Now, police officers have to go to a house now that's completely encompassed and encircled by a privacy wood fence, which means it could go to 6 foot high, unless there's something I hadn't read in here.
That's correct. The code currently allows for a fence in the front yard not to exceed 6 feet in height. Now, if it's going to be on the side or rear of the property, you can go up to 8 feet. But that's for any fence in any zoning district.
Right. Well, I think that 6 foot's pretty tall if there again, if one of our police officers is answering a call where we've got a situation and we're in the middle of a R2, R3, or I can name a lot of those neighborhoods that where something could go wrong and has gone wrong, not because of a fence, but because of situations where the wrong people were in that house. So I have an issue with it if there's not a height requirement for the safety of those and actually for beautification of that neighborhood. I don't think an animal's going to get out of a 4-foot fence. I don't think, an elderly person may, but if you got a gate, you can put a latch on it. And it's kind of hard for elderly to climb over it. So, I mean, there's some other things that I would be interested in supporting, but I couldn't support a 6-foot fence that went down both sides and across the front.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. At this time, I'd like to ask if the applicant or their representative is here, would like to speak. Yes, sir, if you could. Please step to the microphone. Are you Mr. Penrod?
Yes,
Okay.
Charles Penrod. I'm the applicant here, and I'd like to address part of what you was talking about. Now, my fence is 5 foot high. That it's the steel wrought iron type fence, and it does not block. And you was speaking about regular residentials, and the only thing this is changing is for residential architectural or residential agricultural subdivisions is the only thing that this amendment is changing, is affecting, is the RA subdivisions, RA properties. And I know just recently, I've got a pond out in my backyard. I was out there working, and there's a large black stray dog that comes up. It was one of these hot days. It was over 100. He just walks up, walks down, gets in my pond, and starts swimming around my pond. And then gets out, walks on off, goes home, and then later that evening, he came back again for another swim. And, I mean, it's stuff like this, you know, is reason for wanting fences to keep unwanted stray animals out and such as that. And got a pear tree in my yard last year. Deers came in, ate every pear off of it. So, I mean, that along with the safety for my grandchildren when they're over, to keep them out of the street, and my wife and I were both up in age there, and my wife feels a lot safer with having a fence there that can be locked up whenever we're gone, or when she's there alone. So that's all I've got to say.
Mr. Preston?
Bring pictures, because I know you showed me some pictures in the past, that
Yes.
just to give everybody kind of an idea of what you're considering. You want to slide up, you see that logo right there? I mean, yeah. And that's a 5 foot, you say?
That's 5 foot. That's taken from my car out in front of the house. And that's the 3 sections that I got up right in front of the house.
Mr. Bowman?
Yes, sir. I do understand what you're saying, yes, sir. And honestly, I wouldn't have a problem with that fence. My problem comes with what is being proposed for any other fence that might come in, even in an RA. I mean, you can look around, you got Fairhaven, you got Cotton Fields 1, Cotton Fields 2, Cotton Plantation. You've got a lot of RA subdivisions where it could end up with a privacy 6-foot wood fence just because I got mad at the neighbors. I like this fence. I think that's great. I wouldn't have a problem with it. But where my problem comes in with the definition of all the different types of fence that someone could put up. I think that's gorgeous. I think 5 foot on that's gorgeous. I don't have an issue with it. But I hope you see where I'm coming from, too.
Right.
I'm looking at others. And I would have to ask one question before you, does covenants take over on the fence issue?
Yes, sir.
So the neighborhoods that I just described they wouldn't be an issue because of the covenants?
Correct.
So I understand what you're saying, I really do. I would like to see some of these other things struck. I mean, that's a gorgeous fence. It's going to keep animals out, keep your grandkids in. I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Right. I was going to say, actually, I think the idea with where they said that you have to request and it goes through the architectural thing is to prevent privacy fences from going up in front yards. That was the whole issue. The last meeting was over the privacy fences, and that's why they reworked that statement there to where it had to be approved by the planning and zoning.
Are there any other questions or comments? Mr.
I have a
Holder?
question. Sherry, Ashley Trace is an RA subdivision.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted that for the record.
Any other questions or comments from the board
Are
before?
there any covenants or restrictions in the subdivision?
Not that I'm aware of.
No, there are.
I'm with Mr. Bowman on this one because I think that this fence looks good. But, you know, could we have verbiage saying that whether or not it could be a privacy fence, but with a minimum of an opening? Didn't it that's about a 4-inch opening, Reed?
Yeah.
with a minimum of, that could either be aluminum or metal product? Because if we do that and we just go do a wooden fence, could do the same thing, but once you close it up, that's what creates the situation of the unknown for police officers that's trying to go into that situation.
So would you all like to restrict the type of fence and then add the opening language to it? And at least that'll help staff in administratively determining what would be permissible or what would not be permissible.
I'm sorry.
Well, I
I
think
think that would be good, and I understand, and Commissioner Stamey makes a good point. It's just that the 4-inch slats will reduce being able, even though you got a 4-inch wide, because you only have a 3/4-inch bar, so it's really open. I mean, I just don't want anybody to, I don't want it to happen and us end up with a real problem down the road because we done. I like this fence. I have no problem with your fence, sir. And I think if it got turned down and came to me on appeal, it'd be my position to allow it to be there because I think it's a good fence. I'm just real weary of wood fences in front yards, unless it's a picket fence
Well,
or a 3-rail.
that's the difference between a privacy fence and a decorative fence. So you could exclude a privacy fence from the front of the house and allow a decorative fence.
Well, let me ask
I
you a
think
question.
that's good verbiage, really.
What are you doing about the driveway? We're putting a gate there, or just we stopping in the driveway? What are we doing?
On mine, I'm having the fence go up along the angle end of the driveway and then a gate to where you can pull off of the road before you have to open the gate. Where it can, we sized it up and all. I've got a son-in-law that has a Suburban extra long Suburban and a crew cab pickup, and we checked to be sure how far back we needed to set that gate so that they could be completely off of the road if they come and the gate's closed. Because don't want to obstruct traffic or take a chance on, causing an accident. Now, I was going to say one other thing. I know my son, he's a civil engineer, and I'd been talking with him about it, and he said, for a privacy fence, he said, one way of getting around something like that is to put down a percentage of coverage of view that, must be seen, that you must be able to see, 60, 70% or something like that of the front yard or house. And that prevents anyone from, claiming a privacy fence as a decorative fence.
Any other questions or comments?
One other question.
Mr. Coleman?
Ask Sherry this one. Certainly don't want to change anything or do anything, but safety, remember safety. And if it's 4 inches that's required by our code or 3 inches or whatever, think about child safety in this. If a child were to get hung, if the opening was too wide, these are things that need to be looked at and addressed, certainly, because I don't know what the requirements are for the fence around the porch or many other things, and we wouldn't want a child to get hung in a fence if the spacing was wrong or whatever. That needs to be incorporated in it. This looks great, and if it's in compliance, I have no problem with it. I've spoken to Mr. Penrod before about it, and I wish all of them could be that way and that nice.
Chairman Mathis, if I may, in light of some of the comments that have been made this evening, can I recommend that rather than staff having the administrative authority, because it sounds like to me the biggest concern is the privacy element of it, if we were to go in and just allow the decorative fencing to be permitted outright without staff having to review it, but based on your comment made, exclude any type of privacy fencing, would that be amenable by the board? Right now, we don't have any permitting requirements requirements for a fence. So if you were to come in and erect a fence, you don't have to pull a permit for it. But we could certainly add some language that if someone wants to pull a fence, or if someone wants to construct a fence in the front yard, a privacy fence shall not be allowable, and the building department shall review it just to make sure that if they're going to put the slats in there, that there are no building or safety violations, if you all want to add that language.
Mr. Holder?
I think that certainly addresses it to a degree, because we're toying with the privacy versus decorative. No question about it. On the sides and the rear, privacy should be allowed, because you may be wanting to keep your neighbor from peeping through your window. But at the same time, on the front, you don't want to affect your property, your neighbor's property, by looking like a fortress there either. So in the public safety issue that Commissioner Bowman spoke of, you don't want to hinder their actions, and certainly visibility is one of the things they use. So I think it's something that can be done. Absolutely. Next thing is, it gets back what Mr. Penrod said about his civil engineer. What is privacy and what if they may need to be.
All right, while everybody's having their side conversations here, and for the sake of time, I'm going to call for public comment, because this is a public hearing. So if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition, we'll take the opposition first. You're welcome to come to the microphone and speak at this time. All right, if anyone's in favor of the amendment, if you would like to come forward, please step to the microphone and state your name and address for the record, and we'll give you 15 minutes. Or less. Your choice.
I hope I don't go 15 minutes. But my name is Stan Roberts, and my wife Shannon as well. We're residents. We have a residence at 113 Harper Way, and I would just like to voice our support for allowing decorative fences within the RA subdivisions. I've been all over. My father was military, and I've seen lots of different subdivisions, lived in places where there's homeowners associations and covenants and things of that nature. And I would just say there's several reasons why I would believe that allowing decorative fences would be something that would be most beneficial for Henry County, because, I'm looking at it from several different perspectives as a homeowner, that the beautification that actually is created by having fences, decorative fences, is something that would be, I think, incredibly beneficial for our whole county. Also, there's obviously safety issues and protection issues, which are also, that's catamount to our situation. We are actually caring for an 88-year-old, my grandmother-in-law, her grandmother. We brought her from Texas to this house so we can watch her for basically the remainder of her life. And she has an issue where she can get around, but she can wander at times, and we want to make sure that she is protected from a wandering scenario. Or we also have a slope in our front yard, a pretty good slope in our front yard, and we basically wanted to have a small decorative fence that would keep her contained, so that she wouldn't basically fall down the hill and hurt herself and injure herself anymore. The house we purchased was a HUD home, so we did a lot of fixing up to do a lot of things to make it handicap compliant, basically. I've extended sidewalk and done a lot of work, and I put a small fence up there in the front to keep her from going and wandering. We had an instance where we left for about 3 hours to run an errand, and she managed to walk out the front door, and so we wanted to make sure that didn't happen again. So, secondly, we have pets. Sometimes Nana will open the door and the pets would run out. So we would like to have a fence that would contain our animals from running loose in the yard on an accidental basis. And I guess that's pretty much the reasons that I would just feel very appreciative if we could actually get this ordinance passed, so that there could be some and some clarifications about what's going on. But I would stay in agreement that a privacy fence would, I don't think that would be good at all. That would be an endangerment to police officers and to things of that nature as well. And I can understand that, you don't want to build fortresses and bad people getting involved with the wrong situations, but I appreciate Mr. Penrod's motion. I love his fence. I wish I had a fence like that. But anything that would be decorative, no more than 5 feet, with the picket fence, lattice, there's all kinds of, several architectural structures that would work. I know that there's,
Trying to show it's an existing.
that's an exhibit of what we have.
It's going to change it to all picket,
Lost my train of thought. But again, I know that there's pools. People put the protective wrought iron fences around the pools to keep, as far as you brought the issue with the child safety. I think there's enough fencing out there that would be compliant to make sure that there's not a hazard to children in regards to that nature. And I mean, your local Home Depot store and Lowe's and stuff like that, I think has enough product that it'll comply with those things that I think I would think that there already be ordinances for that from maybe just the manufacturers themselves as well. And I guess that's my comments. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the amendment? Okay. Mr. Holder?
Comment to Ms. Matthews. We saw the fence that Mr. Penrod had, and he made a comment that makes quite a bit of makes sense to me. When he spoke of his son being a civil engineer and the percentages, let's just think about what could happen. And people say, well, let's reverse this fence right here, and that's going to be a 4-inch board with 1 inch of spacing between it. At that point, is it a decorative fence or is it a privacy fence? I think the obvious thing is we don't want to have 1 inch and 4 that you can see through, so that you kind of have to peek through the cracks. That's not the intent. But unless we write it into the ordinance, I can assure you that within 12 months or 2 years or whatever, we will be challenged on what is privacy and what is decorative. So I think that the percentage issue that Mr. Penrod used makes perfect sense. I think that, and again, just take his fence that you see right here. If you reverse that, instead of 4 inches of opening and a 1 inch strip, and reversed it, and it was a 4-inch board with 1 inch of strip, that wouldn't be desirable, in my opinion. But is it decorative or is it
And Commissioner Holder, you bring up a good point, and that's kind of the conversation we were having. And the county attorney quickly drafted some language that I think you all will certainly find to be useful. What we're looking to do is to add additional language that states privacy fence and/or any other structure that obstructs or obscures the front view of the property shall be prohibited. Then we're going to add an additional sentence that all decorative fencing shall be in accordance with the same regulations that governs a fence around a swimming pool. That way we're able to make sure that the building code regulations are being met, and that should help to address all of the issues that have been raised this evening.
Okay. Thank you.
Does any board member have any additional
What
comments?
did you say about the pool part again now?
Because we don't know the pool regulations, all swimming pools are required to have a fence around them. So what we're going to do is just keep the fence requirements for a fence in the front yard and keep it consistent with what we require for a fence around the swimming pool.
But you could do a wood decorative privacy fence around a pool.
You can, but because we're adding the language in the fence section under RA, we're saying that a privacy fence shall be prohibited. So if you're trying to do a fence just for the purpose of putting it in your front yard, then the privacy fence shall be prohibited. If you're trying to do it around your swimming pool, then that wouldn't have any bearing on it, because your swimming pool should be in the rear of your property. So you should be okay to do that.
I can't speak to exactly what the requirements are, but the fencing around the swimming pool, I know that there are limitations on how high, how much space can be between the ground and the bottom of the fence, and that you can't have children getting under there or getting stuck through between the slats. I just don't know what those are tonight, but I know that is in our building development code. That spacing information is in our existing code.
And then that may be subject to change in the future, so if you don't put the exact language in this ordinance, if the swimming pool one changes because safety code changes, then this would be in compliance with that automatically without you having to come back and amend this at a future date.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chairman, to Commissioner Stamey's point, the security fencing around a pool is required to be such that it cannot obstruct the view to the pool, so it cannot be a privacy, and it clearly states that it cannot be a privacy fence, and it cannot obstruct the view to the pool for that reason. So it also, it kind of, it's a little bit of redundancy, but it also further states that it cannot be privacy and it cannot obstruct the view.
All right, any other questions or comments pertaining to this item? All right. You have before you a resolution for the amendments, and we have the amended language to the amended language that Sherry has, if you would like to read that again so everybody's clear.
Absolutely. What we are requesting and what the language should now read is that under the RA category listed in Table 7.02.04, letter B, a privacy fence and/or any other structure that obstructs or obscures the front view of the property shall be prohibited. All decorative fencing shall be in accordance with the same regulations that govern a fence around a swimming pool. And that's what we're asking you all to take action on.
Is there not a height restriction in there?
The height is already regulated in the Code of Ordinances. And that is the 6 foot high in the front yard and then 8 foot on the side and rear.
Are there any further questions or comments on this item?
I'm just curious, the pool fence can be, I mean, that's a privacy fence that goes around the pool. I mean, that's you know, I've seen a ton of them. I mean, that, you know, referring to a pool fence is nothing like what we're seeing here. I mean, I'm assuming you could put that around a pool, but Mr. Holder told me there were certain ones you couldn't put. So I've seen that fence around pools too. I mean, Eagles Landing Community, their Olympic pool's got that fence around it. So I'm just curious.
We're trying to address the construction standards governing the height and spacing requirements, and maybe we can say that. The height, the spacing requirements or the construction standards governing the pool fences for pools. I guess we could take a break. We can go look it up. I just don't know what it is on the top of my head. Off the top of my head.
Well, Michael stated, too, that privacy fences are not allowed around pools.
Yeah, I mean, these are the security fences specific for the pool. You have some provisions where you may have a privacy fence around a yard, but then within that pool, there will be a fence. It may require a fence around that pool for security reasons. That's when it has to be cannot obstruct the view. You know, obviously people may have a privacy fence around their entire yard, but the security fence around the pool itself is supposed to meet these provisions. Yeah, if we need to. Until we get some more.
Yeah, there's no wooden fences around a pool. It can be around a yard, but not around the pool itself. Not around the pool.
Let me just ask one more question, and I'll leave it alone. Mr. Holder just told me that chain link's not allowed around the pool either, even.
And that would meet that requirement. This doesn't talk about that.
I'm not sure about that.
That's actually a question.
Around the pool.
That I don't know if it's allowed around a pool.
You know, a coated chain link fence 4 foot high around the pool takes care of any kid. with gates and everything lockable. I'm just, never mind. I didn't want to open that can. It was, I may have an issue down the road, but we'll.
Any further questions or comments? If not, you have before you an amendment to our ordinance, and with the language as Sherry has specified just a moment ago, and I'll look to a board member to make a motion. Have a motion to approve by Mr. Holder. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Preston. All in favor? Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is an ordinance by Henry County to amend Chapter 2 zoning districts, Table 2.03.03, and Appendix A, Master List of Acronyms and Definitions, and to create Chapter 4 Site Design Standards, Section 4.03.33 for the inclusion of a new land use category, definition, and supplemental standards for inert landfills, and that's Exhibit number 14.
Good evening again, Chairman and board members. This request actually was recommended at the request of the Zoning Advisory Board during the meeting on March 8th. At that time, the Zoning Advisory Board had a request to rezone a tract of land for the purpose of an inert landfill. The Zoning Advisory Board felt that we didn't have supplemental standards in place and that we really needed to try to incorporate something either in our Code of Ordinances or in our Unified Land Development Code in the event that we had future requests for an inert landfill. So the request came before the board on April 3rd, and then it was tabled, and then it came back on April 16th. And staff decided at that time it also needed to be tabled, and then it came back on May 15th, and we decided to table it in light of information we received indicating that the state was looking to develop new rules, regulations, and more particularly to focus on the monitoring element for an inert landfill, which was certainly expressed by the commissioners when the request originally came forth. What staff has done is we've reprinted all of the information that we originally brought to you all, but we've made some changes to the current ordinance, and I certainly won't go through the entire ordinance, but just some quick key points. The ordinance will now be a part of the County Code of Ordinances, which will be Section 3-5-109, and we will create an inert landfills off-site sources section. We have a definition that has been defined, and Shay is going to hand out to you the new copy, and I'll just kind of wait till she hands that out so I can kind of go with you. If you go to the second page, we have the definition for inert construction waste. We will also add this definition to the Unified Land Development Code and also make sure that we define an inert landfill in our table of zoning districts. So in the event that someone wants to know where we do allow them, it is also in the code of the Unified Land Development Code. What we are suggesting is that we allow inert landfills that are receiving inert construction waste from off-site sources to only be permitted in the C3, M1, and M2. Now, the only types of waste that we are or will allow will be earth and earth-like products, concrete, cured asphalt, rocks, bricks, yard trimmings, stumps, limbs, and leaves. Those are the only type of waste materials that will be permissible. Anything else that is not specifically listed will not be permissible or will not be allowed. So that is listed in the definition section of the Unified Land Development Code and the County Code of Ordinances. If you go to the second page, item number 13, we have a monitoring section which we've added. What we have indicated in this section is that any inert landfill receiving materials from off-site sources shall only receive inert construction waste from private contractors and shall not be open to the public. We've also added, and this is new language in the copy you just received, that a manifest shall be kept on site and readily available to county staff for viewing. That way we are able, in case we get complaints from anyone saying that the public is dumping waste, that we should be able to see who is actually bringing waste in. And it should again be from private contractors. We've also added an item number 15, which states prior to the issuance of any future building permits, on the subject property, the property owner shall provide a compaction and soil study from a Georgia-licensed geotechnical engineer certifying that the site and proposed foundation is suitable for any proposed structures. Now, that's not part of the information that you all just received, but we just recently had a discussion and felt that it would be best to add that as part of it as well. So as it stands, we are still recommending that the inert landfills be allowed within the C3, M1, and M2, and we have now outlined regulations for regulating the inert landfills. One final note is any activity that will occur on the inert landfill must be in conformance with the Georgia Environmental Protection Division rules. Those are the current rules or any new rules that may be added at such time. A violation of any such rules shall be a violation of this ordinance. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Does any board member have a question or comment? If not, this is a public hearing, so I'll go ahead and I will ask if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in reference to this ordinance amendment. Let the record reflect that we have no one here to speak in reference to that. And if the board members do not have any further questions or any comments for Sherry, you have before you the updated ordinance amendment that Shay just handed out, and I will look to someone for a motion.
Make a motion to approve it.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Stamey. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Bowman. All in favor? Motion carries 4-0. The next item is Square One Properties, LLC of McDonough, Georgia, request a rezoning from C2 General Commercial to M1 Light Manufacturing for property located south of Mount Carmel Road, north and south of Bridges Road, in land lots 113 and 144 of the 6th District, and land lots 128 and 129 of the 7th District. The property consists of 27.154 plus-minus acres, and the request is for an inert landfill. Again, our presenter is Sherry Hobson Matthews, Director of Planning and Zoning, and that's exhibit number 16. Good evening again.
Good evening. Shay is actually going to pass out another resolution for this one as well, and I'll still proceed with presenting the item. The request before you this evening is a rezoning from C2 to M1. The applicants met with staff quite a bit. It's probably about a year and a half ago, and at that time this was new to staff. We didn't have any requests or any other guidelines or regulations to follow, so at the advice of staff, the applicants submitted a request to rezone their property to M1. After a lot of dialogue, checking with other jurisdictions, we determined that what they were proposing certainly could be handled under the commercial zoning district, and as you all will remember, the item that you just voted on now allows an inert landfill within the C3 zoning district. The applicant's property is Zone C2, and what staff is recommending, because the Zoning Advisory Board did recommend denial of the request, but their denial was based on us not having any supplemental standards in place. Because the applicants were requesting to rezone to M1, the future land use map designated that property for commercial and service uses. So a comp plan amendment also will be running concurrently with this request for the sole purpose of allowing them to utilize the property for an inert landfill. What we are asking for this evening is rather than hearing the comp plan amendment, we're asking the board to look at rezoning the properties to C3 for the purpose of the inert landfill, and then that would be in line with what the text amendment you all just approved entails. The applicants would still have to meet all of the regulations of that code, and then anything additional beyond the code that you all see fit to add. We have recommended, if the board so chooses, to deny the request and approve it for C3, one zoning condition that no inert materials may be placed in any portion of the inert landfill within 150 feet of the edge of Birch Creek. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Does any board member have a question or comment for Sherry? Okay. If not, at this time, I'd like to ask if the applicant or their representative would come forward. And if you would, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Nathan McGarity. My address is 575 Covington Street, Jackson, Georgia. Thank you, Chairman Mathis, commissioners of the board. Well, we've been very progressive in keeping in touch with our neighbors about this inert fill site. If you'll give one of those people to each of the commissioners. What we have is over 24 parcels making up, really it's about 12 property owners. All of them shown in yellow are our site being shown in the white on the screen. This include John Deere to the east, property owners to the west. We approached them, telling them what we were wanting to do, and we have letters signed by them that are no objection letters, letter of support, stating that they are aware of what we were proposing, that we're proposing to fill an area of the property with dirt, rock, brick, a portion possibly with some yard trimmings and limbs and such, if it's appropriate. But anyhow, those property owners were willing to show their support by signing a letter and sending it to us. And although they're not here today, I think that stands in just certification of their position. The properties around us, the current zonings are predominantly M1. We do believe that the area will eventually progress commercial from Jonesboro Road, and it's the highest and best use of the property is a commercial zoning. And we're trying to get into a position where we can improve the property and ultimately have it for development. And I'll be available to answer any questions.
Does any board member have a question or comment? If not, we will ask for public comment at this time, and I know we had one gentleman here, Mr. Lane Stokes of 3824 Ashford Knoll of Atlanta, had signed up for a public comment. Are you here, Mr. Stokes? Okay. All right. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak either in favor of opposition of the applicant's request? All right, yes, sir. If you would, please step to the microphone. If you could state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening.
Commissioners. Gary Brown of Crown Manor Subdivision, 639 Warwick Drive, McDonough, Georgia, 30253. We are actually, I represent the community that's just west of I-75 of this particular property. As you well know, there's another project that's going to affect our subdivision, which is the toll road project that's going to bring big trucks and everything in. Our question is, what type of time frame would this inert landfill be allowed to be used, and at the end of that time frame, what type of capping or resolution would it be to put this landfill or whatever the end use of this property be used for?
I'm sure the applicant can probably answer your question. And two, I want to state too, and you may not be aware of this, but the toll lanes will not terminate at Mount Carmel. Right. They will terminate at Foster and Jonesboro Road, so that project will not impact your neighborhood. I know that'll make a lot of people feel a lot better knowing that.
That is correct, and we thank you for looking at that, the resolution, but the bridge right there is going to be down for 9 to 12 months, so that's going to definitely have an impact on our community from that standpoint.
I understand what you're saying, absolutely. Okay. All right, Mr. McGarity, would you like to address the concern that's been raised?
As far as the timeline, was that the main concern? The timeline in the DRI, we projected, an average of 20 vehicles per day, so it's a very slow process. And as far as the capping, It's required that we have a 2-foot capping of, is that correct, Sherry? 2-foot capping of dirt, and it'd be a mobile landscaping, so it'll be, capped and grassed as well. One thing just to add, I know the question wasn't asked, but as far as visibility, there's 100% opacity. So from anyone that's driving from your neighborhood, either the existing treescape that is in place right now with 20 to 25-foot timbered pines or a berm, if that were ever required, but there is a requirement in the current zoning for that, so you can convey that as well.
And I guess this is a question, too, for Terry that I'd like to ask. Assuming that there is an opportunity to post no truck signs on Mount Carmel Road for the west side of I-75 in the neighborhood areas, it's a very narrow road, and that would ensure that any traffic related to bringing materials into the inert landfill would have to come off of Jonesboro Road rather than through a residential neighborhood. Is that something we could do?
The truck ordinance reads that unless it's a designated truck route, the only reason they ought to be on that road if it's the closest way to get to it. So let's say they were on Chambers, the nearest and closest way for them to get to it would be to get on Mount Carmel and come directly there. They can't make it a cut-through to go through there. The way that it reads that they have to leave a truck route and go the nearest and closest way to their point of destination. So depending on where they're at, you would have to explicitly exclude that a section of roadway, which would make them have to go further around, maybe even put them on other county roads. So they shouldn't be on there unless their point of destination is that, the landfill, say if it gets zoned. But to say they can't come through a section of a county road would be difficult the way our ordinance currently reads. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well or not, but they have to go the point, they have to leave a designated truck route and go the closest way to their point of destination, which does allow them to get on a county road, but only because they have to get there. It's like if you bought a couch or something and you lived in a subdivision roads are not truck routes, but the truck has to get to that delivery point. So he goes a truck route, he leaves that as soon as the closest way to get to that point of destination comes up.
And Chairman Mathis, if I may, in the previous ordinance that you all just approved, there is language that the applicant or owner shall obtain a letter of approval from Henry County DOT, which shall be required to be copied on the front page of the required plat. The applicant or owner shall provide calculation of the volume of the landfill, as well as the estimated volume of material projected to be brought onto the site and taken out of the site. The applicant or owner shall provide an estimated number of loaded trucks per day coming to the site per each expected route. The expected routes shall require review and approval from Henry County DOT with limitations determined using input from applicable agencies as determined by Henry County DOT. The applicant or owner shall maintain coordination with Henry County DOT concerning the number of loads per approved route. Each approved route shall be analyzed to determine whether there are any roadway issues that must be addressed by the applicant or owner due to the site's impact, and the information provided by the applicant or owner shall include but not be limited to the following data to the satisfaction of Henry County DOT: roadway pavement sections, including base, lane widths, average daily traffic, and existing truck percentages. Bunding of a route or routes may be required as determined by the required analysis. Henry County DOT shall determine approval or denial within 30 days.
That gives us some flexibility, and if Mount Carmel's narrow and it's more efficient, it makes more sense and safer to come Jonesboro, then that would give us an avenue to review and make those comments.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, if there are alternate routes to, let's say, for instance, coming down Oak Grove Road to Mount Carmel Road to the inert landfill, if they choose that route when they have I-75 and Jonesboro Road, which is a much better route and certainly more suitable for heavy truck traffic than these narrow roads, the fact that you do have some say-so and you will be involved in that process, I think, we can assure that not only are our roads not being destroyed by heavy truck traffic, but there's also the safety issue because many of our roads are really not wide enough to accommodate large equipment. So that was the reason for my question. But the fact that you'll be involved in that, I think, should give us some assurance that we will not have those issues.
That's fine.
One thing, too, Madam Chair, if I may, one of the concerns I've heard from Ms. Kelly is we don't want to ever utilize Bridges Road off of Willow, and right now it's closed, but if it ever opened, the primary entrance and exit to this facilities will always be off Mount Carmel, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do we need to make that a condition? Because we don't want to, if Bridges ever becomes open again, I don't know if that'll happen before this fills up or not, but if it ever opens, they should always use Mount Carmel, correct?
I don't think we want this kind of traffic coming down a dirt road, so I agree, we do need to come off Mount Carmel.
And I certainly think that because they have to submit a plat to our environmental compliance and DOT has to give us a letter of approval, then Terry's team will make sure that that doesn't happen, or that shouldn't happen.
Does that need to be a condition added to number 3, the primary entrance and exit of this facilities will be off Mount Carmel?
We can certainly add that as a condition of zoning. And I think there was a question posed about the hours of operation. The ordinance also regulates that the hours shall be limited from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So that's what's in the current ordinance.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Just a comment, and I would be extremely cautious about limiting a road such as Bridges. We know it currently is a dirt road. It won't always be a dirt road. And if we limit it to access, I don't think that's real good, because it is a county road, and obviously it's not restricted. It may be restricted as a truck route, but to say that you're limiting any access to this particular business, what if another type business goes on Bridges Road and they need access, and we have a restriction in place that the truck traffic, nobody can be on that road? I think we need to look at that very carefully. And also, and I won't go any further, but how much traffic is on Willow Lane today? And it's been generated, it has generated tons of traffic. And there are people that don't want traffic on certain roads, but Willow Lane has impacted a lot of people since it's been open.
Are there any other questions or comments? If not, Mr. Stamey, this is your district, and I know we had an alternate resolution handed out on this, and I will look to you.
I think there was, I'm sorry, Madam Chairman, but I think there was one additional comment. I don't know if it's still time for public comment.
Certainly, we definitely want to hear comments.
Also, along with the time frame, I guess I should have rephrased the question. What is the life of the inner landfill? What time frame as far as the life of the landfill would it be allowed?
Okay, Nathan?
I really don't know the answer to that question. I don't know how long it will take. Probably engineers would probably be better to answer that one. No, I'm not looking for an engineer.
She immediately turned and looked to an engineer.
I'm not sure the question is a question, what is the life of a landfill?
Or this particular one.
I think the question is, how long is it going to take to actually have this landfill?
It would be a market-based answer. I don't know what the meat is. More like the need of for the material. I'm not sure what the exact how fast it will fill. I really don't know. I wish I could answer.
This a lot would depend on the demand.
I think originally we had talked about possibly a 3 to 5 year fill, correct?
We had talked about that, and then I think it came up that we really don't know. I mean, we're in the worst economy still that we've had since the Great Depression, and there's not a whole lot of development going on. We are trying to get this in place to be ahead of future development, and we hope that there is we have enough lead time here to meet that commercial development for this site. But, yeah, you know, you just have to get started now, and then, you know, when you get there, you hope you have, you know, it creates really about 4 to 5 acres, possibly 6 total, and that's where we end up on it. I just really don't know the answer to the question.
All right. Any other questions or comments? If not, Mr. Stamey, this is in...
Mr. Stokes, you sure you don't want to add anything for the record? I know we have had a conversation about this before. Would you like to add anything for the record? Okay. Sir?
Mr. Stamey?
Okay. With that condition about the primary entrance being added to the, as coming from Mount Carmel, not restricting it only to that, but that being the main entrance off of it, it'd have to be paved too, right, Sherry?
Yes, that is correct.
And before any building permit would ever be issued to this site, it would be subject to a core test, and it would be flagged on the plat too, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Do I need to make that part of the record? Is that part of the ordinance already?
It is part of the ordinance already.
Okay. With that, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the C3 zoning.
All right, do you need to make a motion to deny the M1 request and approve C3, since that was their initial?
I'll deny the M1 and go with this, and approve the C3 for the inverted landfill.
All right, we have a motion to deny the M1, but to rezone it to a C3 with the reference conditions. And we have a second by Mr. Bowman. All in favor? Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, because of the action taken on the previous 2 items, we no longer will need to hear the third item for the comp plan amendment.
That eliminates that. Did anyone else sign up for public comment? Mr. County Manager, anything for public session?
Ma'am.
Ms. County Attorney? Upcoming meetings and events on Wednesday, July 25th at 9 a.m. and also Wednesday, July 25th at 6 p.m. we have public hearings for the setting of the millage rate. Tuesday, July 31st is the primary election in Henry County. I will encourage you to go ahead if you would like to early vote, and that is going on at this time. And that information is posted on the website. Wednesday, August the 1st at 9 a.m., we have a public hearing for the millage rate, and at 10 a.m., an adoption of the 2012 millage rate. Monday, August 6th at 9 a.m., we have a workshop meeting. Tuesday, August 7th at 9 a.m., we have a regular board meeting. Monday, August the 20th at 9 a.m., and Tuesday, August 21st at 6:30 p.m., we have regular board meetings. If there's no further business to come before the board this evening, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Have a motion by Mr. Bowman, a second by Mr. Preston. All in favor? Motion carries 4-0. We stand adjourned.